Thank you. Thanks for joining us. It's a marathon, or it's the last penultimate session, I guess. Thanks very much for joining us. My name is Brian Jacobs. I'm the founder and CEO of PenOpen, a company that provides the platform that allows faculty to discover, adopt, edit, and then use open educational resources. And joining me is Lisa March, who is leading our market outreach, our market development. And so I've asked her to join us for question and answer and also for some of the demoing that we're hoping to do today. Okay, so I guess I have to throw this, right? Is that right? Put this. There we go. Okay, so my background, I'm also founder and former CEO of Academos, a company that provides online bookstores and marketplaces to colleges and universities across the country. And also started off as an academic, did a PhD at Cornell, where I also was briefly on the faculty there. Now, it was 2 years ago here at this event that I made a presentation really just getting interested in OER with that other company, as leading that other company. And I started to confront what I thought were the major obstacles for mainstream adoption of open educational materials. I was very excited at the prospect of it, but also, frankly, a little frustrated at what seemed like somewhat daunting obstacles to overcome. But I was excited enough, actually, to end up leaving that company in order to actually do this full-time, right? To try to address those issues. And so the result of that is this new venture, which is just, less than 6 months old. Okay. So some guiding thoughts. Now, these are my thoughts, not maybe widely shared here. I'm not sure. Maybe controversial. I don't know. I hope not. But that OER and tools and services that support it need to be as good or better than commercial alternatives. It is to be part of mainstream learning practice. And so the extent to which we think of course materials as mere commodities and pursue that strategy in OER, I think is a losing strategy. And it needs to be better. It needs to actually be better, in my view, than the commercial alternative. And that's the way I would really encourage the movement to start thinking about it. And that kind of leads me to the second sort of idea, guiding idea for this new venture, which is that OER is not an end in itself. And I think that can often be lost sight of. What matters are student learning outcomes. And now access is a critical aspect of learning success, right? If you don't have access to materials because they're too expensive or for other reasons, that obviously compromises the learning outcomes. But that's only one part of it. And I think we need to think of the approach within the OER movement holistically. If we're going to really achieve what I hope is everyone's goal, which is not the primacy of OER in itself. It may be the result, or it may be a byproduct, but the actual learning successes and improving those. So, okay. So, when I presented 2 years ago, these were the type of areas that I thought were the areas that were most difficult to overcome, right? Discoverability, how do you find the materials, right? Adaptation, what are the best means that are faculty specific, not hacker specific, right? If you think about the mapping of OER to the open source software world, it doesn't map very well at all in terms of the community practice of each group, right? And so the kind of tools that faculty need and the way they think about technology is very different than, the way technologists think of it, right? And so what are the appropriate tools? What's the appropriate user experience? Content quality. Leaps and bounds since the last 2 years in the form of OpenStax. There's a whole lot more to do there, but that's certainly the right track with the foundation support and others, state support. Sustainability. 3 days later at this conference, I haven't heard much about sustainability. How does OER really sustain itself? Is it really going to be a donation model? Is it really going to be dependent on foundation support? That's hit or miss, right? That could be there one year and not the next. So what's a viable sustainability model? Learning tools. OER, back to my earlier point, needs to be as robust as everything that the commercial publishers are thinking about. And that's where they're pinning their future right now. So how do you bring in the right learning tools? And not technology for technology's sake, but to the extent that they are demonstrated in the classroom as effective means of improving learning outcomes, right? They should be accessible, even in this movement. And so finally, and I would say as important as all of that is what's the incentive? Why are faculty doing this? I mean, it's undeniable that it requires more of them to adopt OER than it does a commercial textbook. And so why would they do this? 75% of all teaching in this country is adjunct teaching. It's very hard to make the case to them that they should be doing this out of the goodness of their heart for the benefit of their students for no compensation. Right? Okay. So there's been a number of developments since I presented 2 years ago. I think we can argue the value of Blue Sky, but clearly its intention, at least, is that's the Pearson's Blue Sky, a discovery search engine, right, using something called Guru. Lumen Learning, we heard a lot from David Wiley's talk on providing consulting services and some technology and analytics around using open source content. Quality content, we've heard a lot about that. Sustainability, not so much. Learning tools, Learning Pod, we heard yesterday from the open assessments people, and that is also a promising avenue. Incentives, though, are pretty much limited to the extent to which institutions provide grants to faculty, right? And again, those, maybe they are 1 year and maybe not the next. And so when we think about what Penn Open does, it really is attempting ambitiously to address all of that in one go. So with that in mind, Lisa, would you like to say something about it?
So here, what Brian's demonstrating and what we've been confirming in the marketplace over the last 8 weeks, and I've actually spoken to some of you here in the audience on some of the challenges that Brian discussed in terms of discovering content, adapting it, putting it in a place where other faculty can get to it and easily make changes to it. I know there's cases where there's schools actually disseminating content to 42 adjuncts, and that is a tall task. And so what we're attempting to do here is to confirm that being able to find content, put it in a repository, edit it, and allow you to find additional content by using search engines that allow you to visit other open source libraries and add content to titles. So for example here, you may use an OpenStax biology book, but then Professor Hoffman in the biology department adapts that book for the purposes of his course. So you can have a personal library, a department library, and then an institutional library. These would be branded with the school's website.
Right, and these can all be networked across institutions, right? So you might start, the atomic level might be a faculty member's own library. It might be the department's own library. But from there, depending on permission levels that are set by the users, they can be networked and opened up across the globe, for that matter, right? Across institutions. Oh, right, sorry.
So we talked a little bit about adaptation, and here what the platform would allow you to do is bring in videos and content and maybe even chapters from other texts very easily. Some of the things that we heard from faculty in our market development is that OER, while they have it, it might be in a PDF, it might be in forms that are hard for them to actually edit. And so the Penn Open platform will allow you to easily edit, add video content, add your own notes if need be, and also add assessment. So we've gotten lots of really good feedback on the fact that we can take the end of chapter questions, give students immediate feedback on how they're doing, but also send that information back to your LMS and provide you with analytics. So here is the analytics, and this is just a general slide, but we can get as granular as you would like. In this case, it'll tell you the time that the student spent in the resource, how much they annotated, but as you click through in the live platform, it'll tell you exactly what chapters they read, where they struggled, and maybe where you need to remediate.
All right, so that was very brief. If you'd like actually a full demo of the live version of this, it actually looks somewhat different than this now because we're moving very quickly in the rollout. But if you do have interest, let us know. We'll be happy to show you the live demo. But I'd like to just close with a couple of examples of how we're working with schools. Two rather disparate examples, I think. Two professors, one at Metropolitan College, the other at Touro College, both in New York City, co-authored a Pearson custom textbook some years ago, 5 years ago. And they used it for about a year or so, and then the rights reverted back to the authors. It was a microeconomics book. There were lots of competitors for that sort of thing in the commercial world. And there the book sat for 3.5, 4 years. So we went to them and said, look, we'd like to take that physical, locked up commercial textbook, right, which you now own, by the way, and turn it into a 21st century digital learning tool. And this really sort of enlivened their imagination. I mean, it was a microeconomics book, and now they're embedding Federal Reserve videos into the text. They're improving the editorial content. They're allowing other people as faculty collaborators to improve on the editorial content. They're bringing in schools. It was initially intended for 2 schools. It'll probably be used at least in 4 schools, maybe even as far away as other schools in Singapore and India. They want to actually share it with colleagues in those countries. So this is one book that was sitting on a bookshelf, right? And now it has a new life, right? By coming into this platform in this way. That to me is exciting. Think about if it's happening there, it can happen anywhere in the world. Another example is a college at CUNY, one of the CUNY system schools, and we're in discussions, we can get into details of that now, but they have a problem. Students are asked to spend $75 for a English composition textbook, which is too much for them. It's so much of an impediment that even though the faculty members want them to use this book, they've stopped requiring it because too many students weren't even buying it. But the faculty members have told us that they have the capacity, they have the resources to produce their own content that would obviate the need for buying a commercial text. They needed 2 things. They needed the relief from teaching responsibilities for 1 semester, which would cost about $30,000 to $40,000 for 3 people, and they needed a platform, the right platform in which to develop this and actually make it available. And so we're working with this school to provide both the $30,000 or $40,000 plus the platform to do that. So process-wise, they complete that work. And then in the fall, there will be a course material fee of somewhere between $5 or $10 that will be just part of the tuition. $5 or $10 more. But now, all the materials are in there, right? And they have all the benefits of our platform, the analytics and quizzing and everything is all there. So that's another example of how we're working with schools. Again, it's an open source text, so now that once they've done this, they can do this, share that text with any peer in the community college system in CUNY, and frankly, anywhere in the world, right? Okay, so I'm going to really leave it there and just open up for questions. Yeah?
What platform are you using to produce the books? What's iBook or?
This is our own. This is all our own stuff.
All your own
Can you talk about your sustainability model?
Yeah, so how do we make money, I guess is the question, right? To get right to it, right? So we have flexibility there. We're, recognizing that, the average book, I don't know, what is the number we've been hearing, 100, 150, or something that range. If we could bring that down to something on the order of the piece that we would take out of that, provided that we're providing enough value, is somewhere in the $5 to $10 range, right? But the cost actually might be higher to the student. Why? Because the sustainability doesn't stop with us. We need to generate revenue back to the school so that faculty have an ongoing source of funds. So in the case of this community school, we would be, paying that up front. But on an ongoing basis, we'd be generating revenue that we would share with the school to sustain their open source projects, right? So there's sustainability that happens in multiple ways. It's sustainability of the faculty. In some schools, it's just a fact of the matter. They require replacement of some of the revenue, at least some of the revenue, that has been lost from commercial textbook sales. Some of that money goes for scholarships. It goes for some very good things, right? And we may need, in order to actually get this adopted at an institutional level, to replace some of that revenue back to the school, right? But if the student is paying 80% less by doing that, everybody wins. So that's, and the method of us doing that could be replicating the way students pay for books today, but at a fraction of the cost, or it could be something that's actually embedded institutionally.
You have a question
And the books, when they are modified or enhanced by the faculty, they are contributed back to they are open or they are?
They're totally open. This is not about putting up a wall to free content and then charging for it, right? And we will have links to the sources of the original free content as well. So if it's an OpenStax book, let's say, you can go to OpenStax and get the book, right? So this is not about charging for content at all. The caveat to that is that some faculty may want to load their own materials that they own and want to charge a nominal fee for that, in which case we would pass that on, to the extent that that's being used. But again, that's going to be a fraction of the cost. And that could inspire author sustainability for updates and revisions and so on, right?
Maybe I misunderstood, but do you see it as is it like an iTunes store for OER, or is it like a replacement for a learning management system, or both?
It's not a replacement for learning management. Learning management systems begin with the course perspective, right? This begins with the content perspective, right?
Okay.
And builds out from the content perspective. And I think that may sound like a fine distinction, but it's huge in terms of the way we conceptualize, and think about the features and functionality. So it's not a it works with an LMS, it's not a replacement to it.
from my university, do you work with both the campus bookstore or directly with them? So where does your model insert themselves at the institution level?
Well, you can think of it as an alternative to publisher content, right? So to the extent that students want print copies, the bookstore might play a role there to, stock print copies of these customized texts, let's say, right? This is not a digital-only solution. This is print or digital. And frankly, most students still prefer print, right? Many faculty prefer print. And there's good actual evidence that shows retention is better still with print, right? With the existing devices. So it's still, at best, it's an open question, right? And so we don't want to sort of prejudice that one way or the other. The question is really left in their hands.
So you're not really looking for authors, you're looking for teachers to just make resources available.
Authors, teachers, same thing, right? So yeah, I mean, some subset of teachers are authors, right? So we're working with a number of faculty now who have actually authored their own content. So I'll give you an example, the College of DuPage in Illinois, psychology professor is, author of his own book that he's using in class. He can now use it as an open source text in our platform. We can still compensate him while reducing the cost of the student by, like 70%.
Okay, that's all the time we have.
Okay.
Bye, Lisa.